We're delighted that this episode is sponsored by our good friends at DGR Slatter Decorators in Jersey.
Like us, they're a family that cares, and family is the cornerstone of everything that they do.
With 47 years of experience spanning 3 generations, they've built a legacy of excellence and expertise.
So whether you're looking to add a splash of colour to your living room, revamp your bedroom with some intricate wallpaper, or maybe you want a complete home makeover, dgrslatter.com are there to make your vision a reality.
Hunter, I feel like I need to apologise to you because I feel guilty that when you were growing up that I didn't spend as much time with you as I would have liked. It is. I suppose when you have kids, it's a fine line between spending time with you and being able to spend time providing a future for you. And it's that balancing act.
I mean, I don't think that it felt like you weren't spending time with me, though. Like, as a kid, I don't really remember much of my childhood now anyway. But even at the time, I don't really felt like there was an absence there, I guess, really.
No, I mean, I think...
No, I don't... I mean, obviously, I wasn't absent because I saw you every day, but I just think there's a lot of things that, I suppose, looking back, that I wish we would have done. You know, because we would work in most weekends, and, you know, that I don't know, and maybe I'm being overcritical here because I'm just thinking about guilt and what do I feel guilty for, and I think that's probably the biggest thing that comes to mind.
But equally, you don't know the impact of, like, say if you would have been there all the time, you don't know the impacts of that on me now either. I think that I was a lot more independent than I was quite independent, and that's why I've gone to the US and done all of this, because it wasn't as intimidating for me. And if you would have been around so much more and kind of mollycoddled me, I guess, and that might not have happened.
Plus, you can be around too much.
Yeah, and you might have got on his nerves. Whereas now,
I can say I think he would have done, because I did spend a lot of time with Dad growing up, and honestly, trust me, the grass isn't always greener.
It's like it was getting close. There was a line that was nearly being crossed.
No, but can I just say,
can I just say that is really interesting though, because you know, and I do take some resolve from the fact that, you know, even though there were times that I felt that I missed out on, because of building your future, you're now able to go to America, which you might not have done before, you know, so that's great.
One thing I was going to say is that, you know, you feel, and this is the irony with guilt, we feel guilt because of our interpretation often, not necessarily because someone's raised something to us. And it might be because someone's raised something to us, but often it's our interpretation of feeling guilty. So you feel guilt that you didn't spend enough time with Hunter, but that's not something Hunter's raised to you. That's the way you feel. And it often is in our heads, because equally, when I look back to my childhood, I really don't remember spending that much time with Mum. I remember significantly more spending time with you. And I know that you both spent equal time with me, but I just don't really remember it. So the point being there is you could feel guilty for spending less time with Hunter, but that doesn't mean that's the bit he remembers. Like, it's really interesting how we assume how other people might be feeling or thinking, and therefore we feel guilty based off that, but we actually don't know how that other person feels often.
And the reason that happens is because that's where that overthinking thing kicks in, doesn't it? So, you know, we look back at things and we overthink and start to catastrophize all these things, and what if I'd have done this, and what if I'd have done that. And what was really interesting was that when you said, Nick, about, I want to apologise, Hunter, because you said something like, looking back, I wish I had spent more time with you. Well, that's only because you've now got the hindsight of being able to look back, if you know what I mean. So a lot of people, for me, guilt, regret, massively wasted emotions, because we all do our best in the moment. Okay, we might make mistakes, we might do something wrong, but in the moment, we all do our best. And it's only later in life, when we've got new experiences, when we've learnt more, that
we know the outcome.
And know the outcome precisely, that we can then go, oh, well, maybe if I'd have done. But that isn't how it works.
But even knowing the outcome, sometimes you still don't know the alternative. So, like, for example, Dad could say, well, you know, I wish I would have spent more time with him. But what he doesn't know is, could, you know, let's say he had spent more time with him and not worked as hard on providing for us as a family, could he be sat here now going, I wish I would have spent more time providing, and we could have done that, or we could have managed that. So, you know, a lot of the time we feel guilty or we feel regret because we regret not choosing a different choice, but really we still don't know how that choice would have worked out.
No.
It's very interesting though, because even though I know that, and even though I also know that Hunter only knows what he knows, right? So if I honest, would have spent, although I saw him every day of his life before he went to America, even if I just saw him once a week, for example, if that's all he knew, he would be happy with that, right? So I know all that, and even though I know all this stuff, there's still a little bit of guilt there that I think, I wish.
Yeah,
and it's really strange.
But Hunter's now saying...
Well, I know.
It was a good thing. So I feel guilty for?
Go on.
For stubbing your toes and making them go black, your big toenails. I didn't mean
Well,
to.
I've done it more than once, yeah.
I was polishing a wooden floor in our bedroom.
No, can I just tell you weren't polishing the floor.
No, I wasn't polishing the floor. I was polishing the table, and I dropped polish on the floor.
So you spray it, because you spray it everywhere.
I do.
It was on the floor as well.
I spray liberally with my polish.
You're a big polisher.
I am a big polisher.
Big polisher.
And I sprayed liberally, and the polish went on the floor. Your dad came into the bedroom with our wooden lacquered flooring, and in his socks he skidded and came to a standstill abruptly. Like that, when his toes hit the cabinet, and they both went black. Sorry.
See, in that case, you do know the alternative. Had you not done that, he likely would not have stubbed his toe.
Yes.
So,
So we do know the alternative outcome of that one.
We do. But what was really funny was...
You still do it, though. You still do it.
Yeah, well, we
you
need
didn't learn from it. The only person that's learned from it is me, because I don't walk in there with socks on anymore.
Sorry about that. Have you two got anything? I think we'll talk serious in a minute, but is there anything that you like? Should we have like an open discussion and almost like a confessional? Has anybody got anything that they'd like to put cards on the table? I promise I won't tell you off. Like there's something from childhood, or or have we got something to tell the kids perhaps that we've overlooked?
Well, let me.
That we feel guilty
let me
about.
think.
Sort of.
I've got a question for you. Just because we're talking about children and guilt, do you know those times when children when they need an afternoon nap because otherwise they get really grumpy? And one thing I'm going to say about Hunter, if Hunter doesn't sleep, right, he does have this grumpy streak, doesn't he? Yes. So just a question: if you put a child down for a nap and they refuse to go to sleep, right, which happens a lot, doesn't it? Is that child resisting arrest?
Why did we take a tangent for that?
Yeah.
I just thought about it, and I just thought I'd put it in there. Yeah.
Oh dear.
Okay.
Should we circle back?
Yeah. Let's circle back. Anybody
Yes.
got anything they'd like to share, kids?
I mean, the thing is, there's probably stuff that we can admit to, but
Yeah.
guilt. Do you feel guilt for any of those things?
Not really.
No, I think.
Maybe that time I was arrested.
What?
No. I'm joking.
I was just gonna relinquish my. You're gonna get told off.
You just tested your reaction. He didn't like it, so he backtracked.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he didn't.
Nothing.
No, I don't
No.
think so. I
That's
don't think
good.
so. I think there's usual sibling stuff, as in there's probably a lot of things in our house that are broken that you don't realise are broken. Do you know what I mean? There's probably a lot of that, isn't there?
Oh,
there's a lot of that.
Probably a lot
remember
of
those bottles of wine?
Yeah,
Remember that?
there's stuff like when we spilt wine and we just put the lid back on and pretended that it was still
There's
in
a few
there.
things that we've fixed. There's been a couple of times in the house where we've broken something and then we text each other and be like, help. And then we call and we fix
Yeah.
it. Do you know when you spilt lipstick on the carpet? Do you remember that one?
I don't remember that.
Yeah. And it was
Really?
staying in. It took us like a good few hours to get it out.
I mean, I remember you spilling Vimto on the carpet, so but yeah, there's stuff like that we've managed to, and we just waited it out to see if you found out, and if you didn't say anything within a week, we were like, yeah.
I did find a crystal ball recently.
Oh, I don't think that was
That
me.
was
No.
someone had made a really bad repair on it.
That wasn't,
I
was it,
don't know if that was it actually.
Yeah.
I don't remember that. But do you remember when just doing things and then not realising? Do you remember when we replaced pictures of us in the house with politicians? Do you remember we kept doing it until they noticed?
Yeah, do you remember that? We just kept sticking pictures of random politicians on our faces so that you see if you'd notice in our family pictures and stuff.
Well, it's like a picture of you holding me. I think we put Cameron on there. I think.
I do remember.
Yeah.
You two, actually, although not bad kids, were incredibly mischievous.
Actually, I replaced
Yes,
your
you
school
were.
photos with Nigel Farage.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
Flipping heck.
Did. Yeah.
I don't know what you two like. But anyway, the reason that we wanted to talk about guilt today particularly was, I guess, because so many people have emailed in, haven't they?
Massive. This is a big requested one.
A big request was
Yeah.
to talk about guilt. So we've got some of the emails here that I just wanted to touch on, which I thought would be really helpful for our handbook to happiness, because obviously guilt does strip away people's happiness, as does overthinking. And I do think that, guilt, regret, overthinking, it does kind of all go together, because overthinking is what we start to think about the things that we should feel guilty about. We start to think about the things that we regret. And it all goes kind of round in a circle, and it goes all mashed up in our heads, and then it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So I will start with an email here from Jenny, who said, my abusive husband died and I feel guilty that I cannot grieve. I fake it for my children as they love him. I don't understand, if somebody has, look, it's very sad, Jenny, that he passed away, and I'm very sorry to hear that. But in some respects, I understand that freedom, your pain stopped when he passed away. And so I do, what a lovely lady you are to feel guilty, but
also an amazing lady to fake that guilt. To fake that sort of grief,
absolutely,
for her children. I think is such an amazing thing, because while she might not feel it yourself because everything you've been through, to support others around you is amazing. I think that just shows great strength and not something to feel guilty for. But
and she's always done that, because even though she was in an abusive relationship, which should never happen, she still stayed there because of the children.
Absolutely. And shouldn't grief be earned? Like, we as a family, we went to pay respects quite recently to a very good friend of ours, and what I loved about that was that they called it a celebration of her life. But what was equally just so wonderful was to see how many people were there, the love that was there, the everybody it was just all really wonderful compliments and comments, and she earned that grief in some respects. And that might sound a bit of a silly thing to say.
No, it's a good way of looking at it. I think there was someone who said that, actually, it was my dad that said that you can judge someone's character by the amount of people that turn up at the funeral. And that, it never really made any impact on me, that statement, until I saw Princess Diana.
Oh, goodness, yeah.
And that was the most incredible thing to see. I mean, obviously very sad, but the most incredible thing to see. And yet she struggled with self-esteem and struggled with a lot of issues. And had she known how many people absolutely loved her, then maybe she would have been happier in her life, which is 100%. Very sad.
So I think, just to summarise with Jenny, I think Jenny should be really proud of herself that she stayed in that abusive relationship for her children. I think she should also be incredibly proud of herself that she is, like you say, faking that grief for the children, because it's going to make them feel better. And sometimes as parents, we have to do things for our kids, and I think that's something to be respected. And if anything, I think that now Jenny should appreciate that she's now given now has an opportunity to move forward with her life, and like I say, you should only carry guilt if you ever did something with malice or you did it purposefully. And Jenny's done, in my eyes, absolutely nothing wrong.
And I think that's a really good point, because we often beat ourselves up about things that we didn't do intentionally. And well, all the time really, when it comes to overthinking and guilt, it's usually things that we didn't do with malice or intent. And like we were talking about before, having the benefit of hindsight, you don't have that at the time, so you can't punish yourself for doing something based on the hindsight that you now have when you didn't have that knowledge back then. You just can't. It's not fair. You're punishing yourself on the wrong basis.
Has anybody else got an email that they'd like to read out?
I've got an email of Emily, and Emily said that she feels guilty for living her life to the full when her mum was depressed enough to take hers.
Oh, that's really sad, isn't it? So sorry, Emily. That is really, really sad.
It is very sad, but I think Emily is totally looking at this in the wrong way, because obviously, I'm really sorry that her mum obviously had some traumas in her life which took her to the point where she felt that she was depressed and she'd had enough of the depression, and she decided to take her own life. However, I think some of that, and I'm surmising here, but just from people that we've worked with over the years, some of that was because she probably felt a burden to Emily, which wouldn't be the case, but that's how she may have felt. And the fact is, as a mum, you just want the best for your children. Absolutely best for your children.
If I was depressed and I saw my child happy, that would just give me that little glimmer of sunshine in my life.
Yeah.
And again, we'll never know the full story, but maybe Emily's mum stayed around longer because she saw that Emily was living her life to the full. And so Emily, please, for your mum's sake, do live your life to
Yeah,
the full.
I have a theory on this that is something that I often use when we speak to people at workshops or within our clinic who we struggle, with grief and when it's a parent. And I always say the same thing, and that is that we are all a part, Emily is a part of her mum, even on a genetic level. And we have children to leave them here on this earth as our ambassadors. So realistically, Emily should be enjoying her life even more to show appreciation to a mum and to allow her mum to live through Emily with even more happiness.
And give her
joy.
that happiness.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that links really nicely actually to mine, because we had a message from Lisa who said she feels guilty for leaving her family to pursue her dreams. And I think that is a very similar thing, because again, it's, feeling bad because someone else is kind of being left behind, or this idea that, when someone's passed away, that is a really common when people feel guilty for being happy in themselves. Or in this case, feeling guilty, like I say, for leaving family behind as she's seeing it. And I think that what you've got to remember is that those family members just want you to be happy, and that's the most important thing. And by seeing you happy, actually you're giving them happiness.
I mean, we even around this table, we have somebody who up sticks and left the family.
Yeah,
How dare he?
Yeah,
That would be.
Interestingly, because that obviously put a question straight in my head. Do you feel any guilt for leaving us behind, Hunter?
No,
Wow.
not really.
And you know what? That's great.
Yeah,
that's how I would like it.
But even though, obviously, we all miss you terribly, Hunter, there's
Speak for yourself.
Well, yeah, Liv's like, thank God he's not here. No, but even though you've kind of left us to go to uni, you have no idea how much pleasure that gives us to know the things that you're doing. Like recently, sending us pictures from your scientific research that he called, working in the
St.
Caribbean.
Croix.
Yeah, St. Croix with his turtles and his barracudas.
Well, it wasn't that nice. We just stayed on a private island and snorkeled and stuff. It wasn't, honestly. It was really. It really wasn't.
Wouldn't want it to be
No,
there.
you wouldn't. No, honestly, I promise you wouldn't.
But for us, and this I suppose is going back to Emily, that as parents, as family, we're a part of you loving your life enables us to love our lives more because we're living it through you guys. And even though Hunter has gone, not only do you give us a lot of pleasure when you feed back with the things that you've done and the fun that you're having and the things that you've learned. And I must commend you, by the way. And I meant to tell you this morning, actually, when I was driving you to your driving lesson. And that is to say thank you, because I know that so many parents said to me, oh, well, once he's gone to university, you'll not hear from him every now and again when they need some money, and you keep in touch regularly. And even if you're doing that because just to keep me quiet and
Or
just
maybe it's
to
because
appease
he
me.
just constantly needs money.
Yeah.
To be fair, I don't think I've asked for money that much.
No,
if
you
at all.
haven't. Not
I'm
much.
very self-sufficient.
Yeah.
Actually.
However, I
It's
just
fun
want to
actually
say
because
thank
those are the phone calls that I usually get.
yeah, Dad. So thank you for keeping in touch, because that really means a lot as a parent, because it's just you just want to know that you're okay. But what the other dimension to this is that you live in your life, Hunter, and I'm sorry, I'm not remember the lady's name.
Lisa.
Like Lisa said in Liv's email there, what you've actually expanded the world for us now, because would we have ever visited Massachusetts and some of the beautiful places we've
I
seen?
don't think so.
Absolutely not. I think it's highly unlikely. So that's given us another strand and another element to our life. So actually, Lisa going off and living her life, first of all, there's only one person that's with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all your life, and that is you. And if you don't put yourself first and you don't look after you, then nobody will to that degree. So you owe it to yourself.
I would like to throw in an analogy, if I may.
Oh, gosh, go.
I was thinking it mainly applies to Emily's question, but also to Lisa's as well. And it's kind of like going for a meal with family. And say if one of you had, like, the mother, whatever, has a really bad meal, but at least the child is having a really nice meal and enjoying it, you get some pleasure at least from knowing that going to the restaurant wasn't a waste of time or whatever, that at least they're enjoying it, even if yours isn't that great.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
that is true.
I think
that is true.
Totally
But
true.
that's also just as you bring the restaurant analogy up, which is also a very interesting thing anyway, because if we have a choice of restaurants, we tend to go to the one that we know that we've had good meals from. And then when we go to that restaurant and we look at the menu, so often we look at that menu and we really want to try something new, but then we override that feeling with something that we feel comfortable with.
Yeah. I actually know a bit of science behind that.
Go on.
If you want a
Yeah,
little bit of
let's have the
science.
science behind
Well, it's
choosing off the
actually
menu.
science corner.
Yeah.
It is actually an evolutionary psychology phenomenon that we tend to do that, and the reason why is supposedly because our ancestors, like back when we first started on the earth, that they had to be careful because things could be poisonous. So they used to eat like fruits and things. So you could eat something that was poisonous, but if you ate the things that you knew, then obviously you get that dopamine release because they knew they were safe foods. So the idea is comfort foods is because they're the foods that we eat all the time. So our brain knows that they're safe and that we, whereas when you like eat new foods, you get that uncomfortability, like, will I like it? Will I not? Because it could potentially be a threat. So the idea is that we know it's a safe food and therefore it makes us feel good. We get a dopamine release because it's like comforting because we know we're safe with that food.
I don't accept the science bit of that, but I'm not sure if I'm fully buying into that because, again, let me give you a slightly different alternative to the same thing. That's also like you have back in the day when we used to have blockbusters. Right, before we could, we had Netflix and all this stuff, and we could just watch whatever we wanted on demand. We would go and look for a DVD.
I remember that.
Or a video.
That's
Isn't
in
it?
my
so
time,
video,
not so
yeah,
much hunters,
yeah.
but in my time.
But we would go, and sometimes you ended up with that choice of a film that you didn't know anything about, but there was an actor in there you thought, oh, that might be good, but a film that you'd already seen that you knew that was absolutely fantastic, right? And sometimes you choose the film that you'd already seen, even though you've already seen it, because you know it's good, so you know you're going to get that feel good response, and you're hoping that you might see something new in it, right? So how does that apply to your menu?
It doesn't.
Well,
I'm just telling you the food explanation.
I don't think that applies as much because you're less likely to watch a movie at the same time because the more you watch it, the returns diminish over time. You enjoy it less because you know what's going to happen.
But he's saying you would pick it. He said, how do you explain when you would pick it?
But I think you only pick it a certain number of times. Every time you went to the Blockbuster, you wouldn't choose the same thing over and over again.
But I think equally,
maybe.
if you go to the same restaurant after having the same meal so many times, I think you're going to get to a point where you think, I'm going to try something else.
I can tell you, Nico is one of my friends from college. His sister has been to this restaurant, a favourite restaurant. She's had the same thing for 10 years and never ordered anything else. I was like, Cammy, what would you recommend? She said to me, Hunter, I have no idea. I've only tried this one dish.
Oh, what was that dish?
It was just like something in the bolognese sauce. It wasn't even that exciting, but it was good, to be fair.
Oh, did you have it?
I did.
Did you succumb?
I did. But my point being...
I don't think that fits the norm.
But I think
I don't know anyone else that I
but
could
it makes
say,
sense
well-
evolutionary because if you eat something that you don't know and die, people who are already genetically predisposed to having a dopamine rush from having the same types of food will survive and
behavioural
reproduce.
selection.
So evolutionary does make sense as an evolutionary
No, I get
mechanism.
that, but then if anyone in that restaurant did die, it would get closed down. Right, so
Yeah, but then you won't want to take the risk, would you?
it's
You wouldn't be the
still-
one in the restaurant.
you don't want to be the first one.
Guys, we're meant to be talking about guilt.
Yeah.
Come on, can we go back to people dying in restaurants?
Yeah,
Let's go
okay.
back, to what we were saying about guilt. So, I mean, can I say on the topic of death, actually, one thing...
Cheer it up, why don't you?
You said guilt, and we were talking about people dying in restaurants, but on a more serious topic, I think for me, one big thing, as I'm thinking about it, that I really felt guilty about was the last conversations that I had with my nan. So obviously Dad's mum, who I was extremely close to for, the first 14, 15 years of my life until she passed away. And I've always felt guilty up until fairly recently when discussing it with Dad, because it was something that was really affecting me, about the fact that I never said goodbye properly, or that I never said that I loved her when I last saw her. And that was really hard because I never forgave myself for that, because I always felt that I should have communicated that on that last time, which was a really big one.
Yes, but the 15 years of joy that you gave her compared to getting the chance to say goodbye, I think she would have opted for the 15 years every
I also
single
think
time.
she was ever in doubt that you loved her. I don't think she was thinking after that time and going, oh, well, she's done all this stuff for 15 years,
Yeah,
but
she's
I
not
don't
here
know.
now.
I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I know, but I think that's a big common thing that we do, is we focus on people's deaths, and do we do them proud? Do we do them justice? Do we say the right thing? Could we have said anything different? Did we put something to bed? Or, in the worst case that someone takes their life, could we have stopped it? Could we have said anything? And I just think that, which obviously wasn't this case, but I know that for some people that hits them. And I just think that we can never, ever look back at that. And you've got to look at the whole time like you said, the 15 years that I had with her, and the time that, you know, if someone takes their life, for example, the time that you had with them, and if they were in that situation that was that bad that they felt they couldn't be here, the joy that you gave them when they were.
Absolutely.
You could have been the best bit about their
Absolutely.
entire existence.
And perhaps actually saying goodbye isn't a great thing. Perhaps saying goodbye is too final. Should we not, if someone passes away, should we not just keep them alive in our hearts and in our thoughts? And I think a lot of, like you're saying here, a lot of people feel such guilt. You know, and it happened to both of us. We weren't with your nan or granddad when they passed away.
No, and certainly with my mum, we were in a therapy session, and I heard the like so low a message on the answer phone, and when we finished the therapy session and I went, it was like, you know, your mum hasn't got long left, and you know, we're sort of hours later at this point, and you know, so we weren't there when mum passed away, and I was upset about that for a while, just a bit of guilt. But then when you look at the big picture, right, my mum knew how much I loved her, right, and I'd only been with her the day before, and you know, my whole lifetime and everything that we had together. So I was able to let that go. But also, one thing that I've noticed that when people struggle to let things go, it's the difference between celebrating the day they died as opposed to the day that they were born, and that is a big thing that holds people back.
Yeah,
and
like they remember that. Like this
It's not
is the
celebrating
day.
the day. You mean like
no,
commemorating.
commemorating.
Yeah,
That's what I meant.
yeah.
But so many people remember the day someone died, and I can't tell you the day my dad died. I can't tell you the day that my mum died, but I can tell you the day, both days are the birthdays, and I can tell you the wedding anniversary, and that's what I celebrate those days. And so I
Shifting
never
your
think about
focus.
them
It
not
is.
being here.
And your nan and your mum would be really upset if she
So true.
thought that you two would be upset. I mean, like literally, she'd be here having a stern word
Oh,
with you
of course
both
she
and
would.
saying, didn't matter, I was going anyway. So, and she really didn't know what was happening at that point. So better to have been with her when she did know that you were both there, which was the day before, and not that day.
And I suppose that applies to, was it Emily that you said in your the message that you read out that came
was
into
Emily,
us?
yeah.
I suppose that's the same for her. I'm sure her mum would be thinking, please, you know, I've left, but please don't make your life about me. I want you to be happy. I want
Yes,
you to go
absolutely.
I'm just
forward.
putting it out there. If anything happens to me, then you lot are all crying and all that, I'll be fuming. Actually, no, I'll be the other way. Right, you better cry first. I want loads of tears. No, I'm only joking. But I think as a parent, look, as a family member, when you love people, you don't want them to be sad. So, and I think I would, you know, I think a lot of people would much rather their lives were celebrated, memories were celebrated.
I quite like that movement of like colourful funerals nowadays.
it's
If you've
nice.
seen that, where people kind of do because they want it to be more a celebration and making
Yes.
making it about that person, but not making it about their death, which I think is a really nice. And isn't that the case in some other countries as well? I think where they focus more on the life rather than the death. I think it's more of a traditional thing. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think there's a lot of guilt from being a child, and I think there's also a lot of guilt of parents as well in terms of doing the right thing with bringing their children up. I think is another one as well.
Absolutely. Didn't you have a question?
I
Hunter?
do have a question.
I think that was what Hunter's question
yeah.
related to, if I remember rightly.
So June said that she has mum guilt for not being good enough and letting her children down.
Yeah, and funnily enough, that I've got Katie who's got a similar one that says that she feels guilty for not always having the energy to be fully present for my daughter. And again, I think that as children, we just see as our parents as who they are. If they're busy, as long as we've got a roof over our heads, as long as we know that they love us, then quite often that's good enough. I think.
And kids especially, but I just think on the whole, there's no real criteria to being a good parent. Like, I mean, there's some basic things I think that need to be met, but other than that, like, there's no handbook.
No.
There's no guides.
I think love is the biggest thing, right?
It is, and just providing for. But beyond that, like, how do you really know?
Yeah.
And I think in both those emails, you know, I would say that if your children haven't said, you're not spending enough time with me, then where does that come from?
That's true.
And again, what I said to you, Hunter, you know, right at the beginning, I think just busting this myth around guilt, and you know, and Olive mentioned it before. Guilt, we can only feel guilt once we have the answer from something, right? But without that answer and without the hindsight, we can't feel it. So it is a complete and utter wasted emotion.
It is. And the irony is of that, what you're saying there is that, I mean, scientists say, I'm going to throw another one in, science corner again. But another one is the fact that, you know, we know from, again, evolutionary science that the point of overthinking, the idea of why we overthink and ruminate on things, is meant to be to find better solutions. That's the point of that mechanism. The point is we're meant to sit there and overthink things and make sure we definitely make the right decision. But even if that's correct, and that's why we have that mechanism of overthinking, if you're overthinking things that have passed, you're overthinking with hindsight and the things that you can't change, it's a completely wasted emotion because you can't do anything about it now. It's past and you didn't have the information that you have now, which if you did, you would have considered in the decision.
Yeah.
But you know my best tip for overthinking? If anyone gets into that, and you get into a spiral, don't you?
Yeah.
And it pulls you down. If you get into that spiral of overthinking, then what you've got to do is ask yourself this question. I wonder what my next thought is going to be.
It's an amazing thing. Because when you do that and you say it out loud, what you notice is that it kind of goes silent.
Yeah,
It's
quietens
just-
the mind.
It does. It's brilliant. And you might have to repeat it, but the more time you say it,
Because your brain just goes searching for an answer, but it's got so much information, it doesn't know what to come back with.
I think another really good tip actually that we sometimes speak about often in terms of anxiety disorders and phobias and things like that, but is really good for overthinking too, is to create like a fear versus facts list. So the reason why it's great for overthinking is basically you write down all the things that you're worrying about, and it might just be one thing, but you're really ruminating over it. And then you write loads of counter evidence on the other side as to why that might not be the case. So let's say, for example, I text a friend, I've not heard from her in 24 hours and she normally texts me back and I think, oh my God, I must have upset her.
Yeah.
And then I can sit and ruminate over that and start overthinking and spiraling and thinking, oh my God, was it last time I saw her? I said this, maybe she took it wrong, and I start going down that loop. What you can then do is start writing loads of points down, like, right, how long have we been friends? In the past when I've upset her, she's told me. So actually maybe she told me if it was that.
How often does she normally take to respond?
Yeah, exactly. Considering that, also thinking, oh, I know she's had a lot on at the minute. So you write all those things down and all the alternatives, rather than, because you said before on one of the other podcast episodes about what ifs, and we come up with this what if scenario.
Yeah.
And instead of thinking all the what if negative points that we tend to do, start thinking what if positives and layer them out. So on balance with the evidence in front of you, that can really help to just calm that and rationalize things.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you're catastrophizing and think of the worst, equally likely it's the positive as well, because you have no idea what's going on. So how can
people
you...
don't go in positive
exactly.
spirals, do
Why,
they?
why can you give the negative so much weight when equally the positive is just as likely as
Can you
well?
imagine if we overthink? Like overthink? Is that right?
Thunk.
No,
Overthink?
that's not a word, is
Overthought.
it? Thunk.
Overthought.
Yeah,
there you
there
go.
you go.
The secret
That's what their uni education gets you.
But yeah,
Be
I don't-
overthunk.
excuse me, I'm the Oxford grad on the table. It's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? But yeah, the worst part is I agreed with you. I was like, overthunk. Yeah,
That's the one. That's the one.
Thank you.
What was it you said first?
What did I say?
Overthink.
Overthink. And then he was like, overthought. Oh dear. Anyway, swiftly moving on. Yeah, can you imagine if we overthought in like positive ways? Like, can you imagine if we spiraled? Oh my God, maybe that's great. Maybe that's amazing. Wow. Like, got us, like, no one ever does it, does it?
That would be so good. Maybe we should start that trend off.
Yeah, let's start overthinking in the positive.
Yeah.
I would love that. That's such a great thing.
Like a puppy. That's what puppies do,
Oh
isn't
my
it?
God,
It's
yeah.
Oh my
so
God,
good.
my human's
Yeah,
home.
you're like,
It's the
yeah.
best thing ever.
Everyone that's going to listen to this is going to give us a 5-star review. In fact, they're going to tell their friends to look. You
They're
don't,
gonna be
don't
sharing it.
even listen to it. Just 5-star review.
Yeah, 5-star review it.
Straight off the
Share it
bat.
with your friends on
Yeah.
social media. Interestingly, knowing that we were going to talk about guilt and regret, I Googled what the Oxford Dictionary definition was of these words, and it's really interesting.
I was
and
going to say, don't ask me for the Oxford definition because
No,
I didn't even know
you're-
the word
you're-
overthought.
Yeah, I know,
So.
you're thanking and,
Go on, forgot
and
that even.
thunking. So the definition of guilt is the fact, and this is really interesting, is the definition of guilt is the fact of having committed a specified or implied offence or crime. So that's like guilt, as in you're guilty of doing a crime. But that's that. And then it says the definition of regret, a feeling of sadness, repentance or disappointment over an occurrence or something that one has done or failed to do. That's regret.
Interesting, because I think you can fail to do something, but what's the regret there? Because if you did your best, there is no regret in that sense.
No. And the fact that you were doing it in the first place meant that you gave it your best effort.
And
Otherwise, you wouldn't have bothered.
Exactly. And my favourite example ever on regret and failure is James Dyson. You know, that example where he had
Funnily enough, you saw James
I did.
Dyson, didn't you?
I did.
Did you?
I was meters away from James Dyson.
Yeah, Liv fancies him.
I
Liv,
do.
yeah.
It's
James
really
Dyson,
embarrassing.
if
It's
you're watching, if James Dyson...
Nothing to do with the money at all.
No.
Yeah, nothing.
No,
He
James-
does have a few
actually, I-
helipads,
you know what, I
but
bet-
no, it's not. Honestly, I don't know
No.
what it is. It's like, do you know, like some people have this thing about like a silver fox, like a kind of older, like for me, I don't know what it is.
Billionaire.
There is something. No, it's not the
no,
money.
she just likes the fact he's a billionaire.
I just
Come
think
on.
he's a really nice person. No, there's something about James Dyson. I'd have a bit of a thing.
No, I
for
can
him.
see. Have you seen the glasses that he has? He was wearing them when I went to go and see the Late Show
I have a
when I
soft
was in the
spot for
US.
him.
Suited him. He's got good style.
Honestly,
Can I
just
tell
love
you
He's a
what-
little bit frail now, I think, but
Really?
he
Can I
was
tell you
kind of
what
hobbled.
my thing about
Sorry,
what
can I
love?
just say why I mentioned James Dyson
Yeah, go on.
before we move
Oh,
on?
yes,
Because
okay.
it wasn't
Yeah.
just mentioning him to tell you that I fancy him. That was not the point. The point of it, unless anyone knows him, then hit me up. The point of me mentioning it was because he had, when he built his vacuum, it's this famous example that they use in the Dyson adverts, that he had over 5,000 failures when he tried to create it.
Mm-hmm.
And the point is, I mean, how many people would stick around for 5,000 attempts? They'd just go, I wasted my time, I feel major regret, and that'd be it, move on from it. So it just shows that you can't feel regret, because had he not had those 5,000 attempts prior, he wouldn't have got to where he was. So,
Yeah.
if we give something a go and we don't succeed, we can't feel
'Cause
regret
Also,
if we
sorry,
did our best.
I'm gonna jump on the back of this James Dyson example and throw in another James Dyson example. James Dyson special right now.
You want him to be your brother-in-law, don't
I do.
you? I know.
That's what it
I
is.
know.
No, so when
I love hoovering, so if he could throw in a free hoover for the mother-in-law, I'm a happy
But it's not-
lady.
yeah, but is it a Hoover still, or is it
a
now a
vacuum.
Dyson?
Oh, a
no.
Dyson, yeah.
No, has Dyson taken over from Hoover?
No.
Anyway,
So
I don't
what was
know.
it?
Go on, Hunter. Words of wisdom.
Okay.
What I was going to say is, even if you fail enough times and then you get somewhere in the end, also the fact that failures aren't always failures, and the fact that they can be beneficial as well, and you can do something else with the failure,
Yeah.
I guess. So, for example, using James Dyson, you know the air blade things you dip your hands into and it like
Yes.
shoots
Yeah.
out? That was initially invented to straighten clothes.
Oh.
Like
The hand dryers?
it's meant to put clothes in there and then it would iron out the wrinkles.
Did that not work?
With it didn't.
Like
Sorry.
a pant press, I think.
No,
Well, no, it's like-
no.
it's
Right,
like-
right,
was
can
it
I
a
just
steamer?
tell you
use
something?
air to
Right.
use air to get
Yeah.
creases out of folds.
Yeah, so
Oh, right.
clothes,
you know when you go
clothes.
into the service station, you do your business
No, I know
in the
those
bathroom.
things,
You wash your
yeah.
hands. You put your hand under that thing that like nearly blows your skin
The air
off.
blade.
Yeah.
And if you're getting elderly, like
Dyson
literally,
air blade, he
you know,
does it.
like
Yeah.
literally your skin's hanging off.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
a,
yeah.
like an old
Yeah, but Hunter's
Satsuma.
saying it's meant to be like a
No,
pant
it's not
presser.
meant to be. That's why
That was
that
the-
was
That's
the
what- that was-
invention behind it. That's why the
got
air
you.
kind of comes in like that. There's like two narrow things
Yeah.
to try and straighten the
Yeah, yeah,
cloth. Well, it didn't work, but they noticed it removed water
Very
when
quickly.
they did it. So they were
Got
like,
you.
oh,
Like a
skin.
steamer. Like a
yeah.
steamer.
So
then-
that's
so then they were
where
like,
a
oh, we can-
failure of a decreasy clothes thing became a hand dryer.
So my point is,
But I mean that's a fact through history that so many inventions were ended up being something else, which is great. But I think what Hunter was going to go to was that whatever you do, you get some feedback, and if you look at it as feedback as opposed to
Yeah.
a failure,
Yeah.
then you can use that feedback and move
So-
forward.
Or how
What I
you
was-
can do better rather than
well,
regret.
I was actually going to go down that route. I was
Okay.
going to, I kind of was. I was also going to say that you can also look for the good things and the opportunities and other things that have come from failures. Not doing something might have opened another road and seeing the benefits of that road as well.
Absolutely,
So true.
No, that is
So
true.
true.
So we've talked about guilt in so many capacities, and I think that we can feel guilty for so many reasons. You've got things like survivor's guilt, which we hear a lot about when we're treating people in clinic
PTSD.
from PTSD, but I think a big part of guilt is us feeling sort of responsible for other people's lives. And I think if
So true.
and I think if you're going through life and you're just doing your best, even if you make a mistake, but you do your best,
And trying to have a positive impact on the people you meet, doing your best on that.
absolutely,
You know?
then you've got nothing to feel guilty about.
The thing is, if you make the mistakes and you do hurt people by mistake, then you learn for the future, so you help more people in the long run. Like sometimes it's a mistake, an inevitable mistake that has to be made.
Yeah.
To stop you from doing it.
And
in
often
the
we
future.
focus on that mistake and see it as a regret rather than going, now I'm great at doing all this and supporting these
Yeah.
people because of that
Exactly,
one mistake I made.
So
So what to
bringing
conclude,
our conclusion.
what are we adding in
yes.
our book?
Has anybody got anything to add on the guilt, regret, and overthinking page of our handbook to
I'll
happiness?
start off with that. I would just say that guilt is an absolutely wasted emotion. And as you described from the Oxford definition, that unless you go out of your way to do something on purpose that turns out bad, then feel guilty. But if you don't do anything on purpose, you should never harbour guilt.
And then I would throw on the back of that if you do something that you feel bad about, look for the positives in it, look for the impacts of it,
What
you've learned from it, what you've learned has impacted your life. Like really quantify that. Well, I won't say failure, but that mistake, whatever it
focus
was.
on the positives.
Exactly, yeah, but really quantify it for what it is and not just the negatives. Look at the whole picture and see it for what it is, I guess.
And getting the whole picture, and just going back to you,
Yeah.
was we started this episode off with me apologising to you because comparatively I spent more time with Liv growing up than I did with you. And you said, but you didn't see that as a bad thing, so you've actually let me off the hook. So if you feel guilt with someone, then ask them
Yeah.
and say, you know, I feel guilty because, and that person will invariably let you off the hook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was actually, and I made a little note of that. That was going to be my suggestion for the handbook to happiness.
Oh, okay.
Is that, you know, if you do feel guilty about something, speak to the person and say, look, I've always felt guilty for whatever it was, and you will probably find that whatever it is that you've been ruminating on, the thing that you've been overthinking about, the thing that you've been catastrophizing about all these years, carrying this weight on your shoulders, that you did something that you so regret and feel so guilty about. I think most often you will find that person go, really? It really didn't affect me that bad. And we
Might
should
not
Even if
remember.
it did, then you've got the opportunity to apologise for it and explain your point of view. So they've got that understanding. And then you can say, you know, even if they said, yeah, actually it did upset me, then you can go, and I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it to. And
100%.
by them seeing how upset you are by that thing, then in itself, that puts it right. So, you know, speaking, having that communication, and if you're in the unfortunate situation where you can't speak to that person because they're no longer here, is to consider what would they want? What would they want from you? Would they want you to carry around that guilt, or would they want you to live your life and be happy because they don't have that opportunity
Absolutely.
anymore?
Anybody got anything else to add before I conclude?
One more thing.
Go for
A
it.
little bit of science, little tip that I've not mentioned. But if you are struggling with overthinking, another really good thing to do is to ensure that you are getting enough sleep, and also exercise can really help. The reason being for that is that when we are overthinking, we release high levels of cortisol, which is our stress hormone, and that can make us overthink even more. And sleep really reduces that. So does exercise. And we also get more anxious from sleep deprivation because it sensitizes a part of the brain called the amygdala, which is our emotion center. So if you are sleep deprived, you're going to be more anxious, more overthinking, and that's just going to make things even worse. So those are some little tips that you can do from a science perspective that will help to reduce that also.
Anything
I'm
else?
going to throw in one more thing that's a lot more simplistic than that and doesn't make me sound as smart. Just that if you are guilty, just appreciate the fact that if you feel guilty, it's because you're recognizing you've done something wrong or whatever
That's
has
actually a really
happened.
good point.
And because you're recognizing it, it shows that you've grown and that you've learned from it. And even the fact you feel bad, it says a lot about you in the fact and how like thoughtful and how caring you are that you feel bad about that, and that you now have the ability to recognize that, and then going
And
forward,
rectify it.
obviously not make the same mistake again.
That's
and that
great,
guilt
but don't
is-
harbour it. Speak to the person, come to an agreement, let it go.
Yeah,
and you'll be surprised. I think a lot of people won't even remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And very lastly, if James Dyson is listening to this podcast and would like to either take me on a date or give us a Hoover or sponsor the podcast
He
for
won't give
future
you a
episodes.
Hoover, would he?
I don't know,
Come
he
on.
might.
No,
He
it's,
give
it's
you
a
Oh,
brand.
it's a Dyson.
Yeah,
Okay.
don't
brand.
insult
Yeah.
him.
Is it a vacuum? I
Yeah.
need to
Don't
work on
insult
this.
him.
Right, okay. So yeah, if you'd like to give us a vacuum or a hand dryer or any other Dyson appliance, or if you'd like to sponsor the podcast for future episodes, please get in touch
Or-
and let us know.
I think that James Dyson might be married, but if any of his kids aren't,
Then there's
You know?
possibly we've got two single children over here.
Yes, we do.
Two young adults that are both single. Dyson family. So I think for realistically to conclude, I think that I would like everybody to sort of see guilt like the snooze button on your alarm, in that unless you switch it off, it will keep going off periodically, and you can have pockets of time where you forget about it, but then that bell starts to ring and it wakes you up again, and you're reliving it again. And so deal with it, address it, change your perspective of it, speak to the people involved to let yourself off the hook. As we've said, look, unless you did something with absolute malice, you should never, ever feel guilty for anything. Apologise, learn from it, move forward from it, realise that whatever you did was the best in the moment. And we hope that with everything that we've discussed today, that if you do struggle with guilt or regret or overthinking, using with overthinking, you know, what's my next thought going to be, will help to silence it. Really hope that today's episode has resonated and helped and made a difference. And we just hope that you're thoroughly enjoying our podcast. If you are, do be sure to like, subscribe, follow, and give us a 5-star review. We would really appreciate it very much. Thank you. And to our little family, to yours, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll see you next week. Thanks so much for joining us. Wherever you're listening to this podcast today, do be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and we'd be incredibly grateful of a 5-star review.
Oh, and don't forget to recommend our podcast to your family and friends.
And if you'd like to have a look at some more free resources, take a look at our website, nickandeva.com.
If you want to drop us a question, we'd love to hear from you. Send it to admin@speakman.tv.
And you can follow us. We're at the Speakmans on all social media platforms. On YouTube, we're Handbook to Happiness Pod. If you are struggling, do be sure to speak to your general practitioner. And all that's left to say is that we appreciate you spending time with us today.